So, welcome to Northern Powerhouses, our business success stories series of interviews, where we discuss with local business leaders their backgrounds, their successes, and their challenges, and what's really driving them forwards. And this morning, I'm delighted to have with us Jon Wright, who's founder and CEO at Feel Electric. So, firstly, Jon, thank you for spending a bit of time with us. And if you'd like to introduce yourself, Feel Electric, what you do, and how you help people, that would be wonderful.
That's fine. No, and it's a pleasure, Chris. Nice to be on. So I founded Feel Electric just over 4 years ago. It was born actually out of lockdown. I'd sold my previous business, which was Exercise for Less. We'd pioneered the budget gym space. We were
Brilliant.
one of the first people to do that, and we sort of rolled out. Started with one site in 2009, and rolled it out, and ended up with over 50 sites
Wow.
and sold out in a series of private equity deals between sort of 2013 and 19. And then I was in the middle of lockdown, and somebody rang me up and said, "Have you come across this concept called EMS, which stands for Electro Muscular Stimulation?" Which I hadn't. And somebody came out to my house, and I did it. And for people who don't know what it is, it's you do a 20-minute workout with a bodysuit on, and you have an electric current put through your body, and it magnifies the contraction. So if you go to the gym and do a bicep curl, you're contracting that muscle once a second. Through EMS, it's 98 times a second. So it's a
Wow.
biohack. It's sort of the latest biohack to come out, and I was absolutely blown away by how I felt, because I was getting the same chemical reactions from a 2 hour workout in a
Yeah.
20-minute session, but how I mentally felt as well, and how I physically felt. It was one of those sort of light bulb moments. I was straight away thought, well, why did we not do this in the UK? What's the history? So I started doing some research into it, and in Germany, where the technology started, and it's been there for about 15 years. There's 2,500 EMS studios in Germany.
Wow. Okay.
So and it felt exactly the same as when I started X4L back in 2009. We used to go to Germany to look at a budget operator called McFit. So Germany was mature in terms of budget gyms in 2009. And obviously we took this concept to the UK, and well, we all know what's happened with budget clubs in the UK.
Yep.
And it just felt exactly the same with EMS, in that it's mature in Germany, but not
Yep.
in the UK yet. So it was like going back to Germany to look at what the future's going to look like in the UK. So there was a lot of similarities, although it's a completely different concept. And yeah, so we've spent the last 4 years, rather than rolling out EMS studios, what I've done is we built a tech platform to run an EMS studio, because that
Right.
was the thing that's, I suppose, taking the learnings from X4L. We one of the big learnings from X4L was build your own platform. You need your own
Yep.
platform.
Yep.
And when we went out to Germany, there wasn't any specific platform to run an EMS studio. So that's what we've been doing for the last 4 years, doing a lot of R&D. And we finally came up with the product which we're now licensing through a franchise, and we
Yep.
started doing that this year. So that's a brief background to it.
Wonderful. Absolutely incredible. So maybe go a bit further back. So when pre so was X4Less, was that your first business, or was there a business career before then?
So just before we were chatting away about talking about pivoting, I think I've pivoted at least 3 times in every business I've ever done. So Exercise for Less was a pivot. I opened the first club in 2006 as a traditional health club, and it was pretty much a nightmare from day one. What could go wrong went wrong. From I had a business partner who pulled out on the eve of signing the lease. The building contractor went bust halfway through the fit out. And then by the time we finally opened, it was 2008. We had a financial crash and
Oh
crisis,
goodness.
and
Yes.
and it was
Yep.
a disaster. So it was a business model that wasn't working. So I was either had to close it or do something different.
Yep.
And that's when we first came across this concept of a budget club. So we just changed it. We pivoted, and we
Brilliant.
changed it into a budget club.
Brilliant.
Literally January 2009, I cut the membership costs in half. and within 3 months, it had gone from a loss-making business to a profitable one. So everyone says, "Oh, you were one of the pioneers of Budget Clubs." Well, I only did it because I had to. I didn't have a choice. It was either that or close it. So, and obviously we went through that. We did the first club, and it became very profitable. And so we did another one, and then we did another one, and then we got some private equity money and started rolling out very quickly. And
Yep.
and like I say, we ended up with a 50 million turnover business. So it was a good learning experience.
Fabulous.
Lots of mistakes, but lots of learnings on the back of it.
Fabulous. So when you were growing up, was business always going to be your thing, or did you have
So
other plans?
I grew up on a farm, and farmers are traditionally very entrepreneurial.
Yes.
Obviously, it's very topical in the
Yeah.
press at the minute, but farmers are very entrepreneurial. So I was always, even as a young kid, I was involved in various things, money making schemes. So yeah, it's always been in the blood.
Brilliant. Brilliant. And looking back over the career that you've had, what are some of the biggest issues and challenges that you've had to overcome?
Funding, always.
Right. Yes.
Yeah, funding startups is difficult. Dealing with high street banks is difficult.
Yep.
And I've kind of done the lot. I've done the high street banks. I've done private equity.
Yep.
I've done unitranche debt funding. So
Yep.
I've sort of seen the full spectrum of it, and it's um, it's always a challenge because you've got to persuade people
Yep.
about your vision and that your forecasts are accurate,
Yes.
and all of the above. So and different fundraises create different challenges. You know, Obviously we went through the PE process, and for any entrepreneur, sort of giving away part of their business and then eventually giving control away mentally that's quite challenging. So
Yes.
it has its upsides. Obviously it allows you to get a return on your initial investment, but
Yep.
you've got other people sat around the board table who don't necessarily agree with what you're saying. So there's a challenge there. High street banks, especially at the minute, I'm finding very conservative.
Right.
So it's all fundraising is always challenging, and I'm involved in sort of a few other businesses which I sit on the boards, and
Yeah.
funding cash is always the biggest challenge for me.
Yes. It's an interesting thing, and you rightly said, one of the challenges for entrepreneurs is the feeling we're giving away shares, and because we're selling them in effect, aren't we? Or however it works, we are trading them. But I meet a lot of people that are either thinking about accessing funding or are definitely not thinking about it because of the fears they have. What are some of the key learnings you've had about raising capital in general? Is there anything that perhaps you weren't aware of before you started that was a bit of a light bulb moment for you?
Well, I suppose having sort of the 10 years at X4L, having dealt with so many different fundraising options, there are a lot of options out there. Number one, get a really good corporate advisor.
Right.
That is absolutely number one. Make sure you've got a really good CFO who's all over the numbers is number two.
Yeah.
But there are lots of options out there. I suppose my biggest advice to anybody is if you're going through a private equity process, be very, very careful about who you go with.
Yes.
Um, because once you're in bed with them, that's it. There's no going back. And it's not just about raising capital. It's about, are they the right partner? Are they going to
Yes.
give you the right assistance moving forwards? And that was a big learning for me from X4L. I won't go into details, but that was probably one of the biggest mistakes I ever made was the private equity firm that I went with. But you live and learn, and that's how you
Yeah.
progress by making mistakes.
Yeah, it's really interesting. I often talk to business owners about building their team of employees, suppliers, customers. I know, and often I've come to believe that good relationships come with a match of goals. We both want to achieve the same thing, but great relationships come with a match of values. And I
Yeah.
would imagine getting a match of values with the particular PE you're looking at would be really key
The
for
biggest
a successful outcome.
the biggest issue with private equity is hardly anyone has ever run a business. Hardly any of them are entrepreneurs. They're all mainly they're accountants, and
Interesting.
uh,
Yeah.
entrepreneurs think in a very different way.
Yes.
And don't get me wrong, it's very important to have an accountant sat around the board table,
Absolutely.
uh, making sure that everybody's being sensible in terms. Entrepreneurs, we're when our risk ratios are completely different to most people. So having an accountant who's the complete opposite, adding balance to the equation is important. However, that said, and don't get me wrong, there are some private equity firms out there who do have entrepreneurial experience,
Yes.
but a lot of them don't.
Yeah.
And you should never let an accountant run your business because they'll end up making the wrong decisions. But there is a fine balance, and again, it just comes through experience.
Yep.
When I did my first private equity deal, I was young. I'll be honest, the reason I went with them is because they offered a load of cash off the table, but that just wasn't what the business needed at the time.
Yeah, I get it. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
But you get you get the starry lights of someone offering you a big check, and you just
Well,
you get blinded by it.
yeah, it's someone helping you realize your dreams. I mean, it is, as you say, a very attractive thing to want to do. It's just obviously the
Mm.
caution of, is this the right relationship? Because it's a very intense relationship, isn't it? And a very demanding relationship, I guess.
It is. But would I change anything? No, I wouldn't. I think with hindsight, would I change anything? No, because I've learned from that. So this time round on this next business that we're doing, and we're doing things completely differently. So there's
Brilliant.
no, that's how you learn, by making mistakes.
Yes.
Um, uh, Success is not a good teacher. Defeat is a good teacher.
100%. I'm always reminded of our founder, a guy called Brad Chiggers, a very very successful guy, and he told me a long time ago that he believed he was as successful as he was because he'd made more mistakes than anybody else, not despite it, if that makes sense. It was the willingness to go that bit further and accept defeat and failure that made him as successful as he was.
And that's why, if you're not a resilient person, don't
Yes.
start a business. Just don't go and get a 9 to 5 job. You go and have a much easier, less stressful life.
Yes.
I think if you look at all the successful entrepreneurs, the common thread that you will see is resilience.
Yeah.
Defeat or loss, defeat just doesn't bother them. They just get back
Yeah.
up again and use it as a learning experience and move on.
Yes. Absolutely. It's a tough thing, isn't it? I was speaking to an entrepreneur that had a real significant issue. They're working primarily in hospitality and growing very fast and investing heavily right at the point of COVID and lockdown. And
Yeah,
that
yeah.
that while I totally accept challenges happen in business and in the economy, etc. That was a for me an unforeseen thing that would have that impact. And it can be quite hard overcoming those challenges, though, can't it? Because they do leave their marks.
Yeah, well, I feel sorry for the hospitality sector. Coming out of COVID and then into the cost of living crisis,
Yes.
and then obviously we've had a fantastic budget chucked on us as well. So I do really feel for the hospitality
Yep.
sector. But I was with a very good friend of mine the other day who's got a series of hotels and restaurants, and his response was, "Well, yeah, some of my competition is going to go out of business, so I'll be okay."
It's an interesting one. I remember in my first business going through. probably the worst recession pre 2008. I think that was late 90s. And what I think we celebrated was survival, because survival, as you say, a whole bunch of our competition went by the wayside, and there were the competition that were that were bringing the value of the marketplace down by, that they were close to being unprofitable anyway, and it did help us. That survival phase of getting through that was a big foundation for the next stage of growth that we had. Um,
Mm.
so I will ask you, I'm free to focus on this, but I think it's fascinating given you've done this. I do meet lots of business owners, entrepreneurs that do for want of, I'm trying to think of a better word, probably, yeah, fear that idea of taking investment on. And one thing I normally say to them is that in general, growth costs cash.
Yeah.
And so you can grow organically, but you will be limited by the cash you generate. Is that the sort of feeling that you have too, that if you want to grow at the rate that you choose, we have to make sure we've got the right level of cash to do so?
So that was when we were rolling out budget clubs. I mean, the capital investment for budget clubs not insignificant.
Yeah.
Each one was costing £1 million. So
Yes.
the cash requirement was very high.
Yeah.
And when you looked at it, what would you rather have, a 100% of a small business, or a smaller percentage of a very large business?
Right.
And when you work the maths out, and obviously budget clubs in those days, it was a fairly new concept, and there was an opportunity to gain some market share as well.
Yes.
Our concept was very different from Pure and Gym Group, so we were a little bit different. So when you weighed up the options, the rationale, and when you think about it logically, the rationale was 100% was to do a private equity deal,
Yeah.
because that was the only way we were going to get the traction to go from what was a regional business to a national business.
Yeah.
And it was the only way we could do it. We'd sort of, what's the expression? We'd been bootlegging it for a while,
Yeah.
and we've been taking on some debt, but to really go for it, we had to do private equity. And we did a series of deals with private equity, and that's what gave us the growth.
Brilliant.
To go from one site to 52 sites in 6 or 7 years, I think we did, it was the only way you could do it. So
It's
yeah.
it's funny. I often talk to people about fast growth, and and obviously fast is an adjective that has different levels. But fast growth, and people, most people go, "Oh, that must be great." But when you start talking about those sorts of numbers, if you had any level of significant growth, how much challenge that must have caused, behind the scenes of actually growing that fast.
Yeah, and I suppose I love fast growth environments because it creates opportunity for
Yeah,
people. And what I love more than anything is seeing members of the team grow and develop, and take those opportunities. That
brilliant.
that gives me a lot of pleasure to see that. And we had that at X4L. For instance, the first general manager of our first site ended up becoming COO. So
Brilliant.
to see him go on that growth journey was fantastic.
Brilliant.
On the downside, because you grow so quickly, you outgrow people, whether that's staff members or suppliers. And so in some cases, I had to say goodbye to some friends
Yes.
because they weren't, they didn't keep up with the growth story.
Yeah.
So the swings and roundabouts, but working in a high paced, fast growth environment is so stimulating.
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know and we were in the fast track 100 for I think 3 or 4 years running. It's nice to be in that environment. What I would say is the current business, Feel Electric, actually is growing faster than Exercise for Less ever did. So, which
Amazing.
is great as well. I mean, I just love working in high growth environments.
Yeah.
And seriously, I mean, we're on course. I think our revenue this year will be 160% up on last year.
Wow. Brilliant.
So
Brilliant. So, so what have you learned about growing businesses? And let's focus on fast growth businesses because I'm sure a lot of people would be really interested to what are the key learnings you've got?
Well,
Um,
number one, cash is king, right?
yeah,
But we've covered that.
yeah,
Um, it's the right culture, so I'm massively into culture.
yeah,
For me, it's everything, and
brilliant,
it'll come as no surprise that all the main characters involved in Feel Electric or were ex 4L and have come across with me. So
brilliant.
we've already got an established
Oh, great.
team. We've worked together for a long time, and culturally, we fit well.
Yeah,
We work hard and we play hard, but we have fun, and that's the
brilliant.
main thing.
Yeah,
You know, number one DNA in our culture is to have fun. Well, you've got to be successful to have fun because if you're not successful, that's not much fun. So, but it's that having that cultural fit. And I suppose when it comes to recruitment, I do have an acid test. Uh, I make a decision within 30 seconds, and my decision is, would I go for a beer with this person? Yes or no? And if it's no, I probably, they're not going to get the job.
yeah,
So cultural fit for me is everything.
brilliant.
And, in a fast growth environment or in any startup, there's ups and downs, and you've got to have a team around you that appreciates that there's ups and downs. Success does not travel in a straight line, that is for sure. So when there's downs, you've got to circle around, get the wagon circle round, and
Yeah,
you've got to pull together. So you've got to have the right people to do that. So
absolutely.
culture is everything for me.
Brilliant. Yeah, I mean that's certainly the experiences I've had is you get the culture right and you get the team right and that share of values. It reminded me of I know again our founder Brad talking many years ago and he said one thing he likes to do and it's probably not quite so popular nowadays, but he'd try and take the potential recruit out for dinner, probably often with their partner, and not try, but hopefully they had enough glasses of wine, and then start to just see how they treated the servers. And it was really an interesting, measure from his perspective of how you would treat somebody, that was serving you, especially when a couple of glasses of wine had gone down, and that was one of his measures of the person they were thinking about recruiting.
Running a team is like being part of an elite sports team, and and I'm fascinated by elite sports teams. So I love reading biographies on the All Blacks and people like that. And
Brilliant.
what's interesting is uh, what's the difference between a successful and non-success, or a really successful elite sports team, and it's how they operate under fatigue. It's decision-making process under fatigue. And running a team in a startup or a team in a business is exactly the same. How do people operate when they're stressed, tired,
Yeah,
fatigued? Are we still making the right decisions in that environment? And that's what creates success. If you can be going at 100 miles an hour, fatigued, tired, and full of anxiety, and still make the right decisions,
brilliant.
then you've got a good team.
Brilliant. Yeah, it's we as an organisation work quite closely with the sporting world because from a business coaching perspective, there's business knowledge, but there's also coaching individuals. And I know we've had Sir Clive Woodward speak several times with us, and obviously his principle, the teacup principle of think correctly under pressure,
Yeah.
was exactly for me is exactly what they've highlighted. And yeah, it's fascinating. Yes, we do. I think I would imagine that you've therefore read the Legacy book about the All Blacks, which is
It
just
is
great.
good, yeah.
And again, it is all about culture, isn't it? And it's so fascinating. Um,
Which kind of just sorry, I'm just gonna divert onto another business I'm involved with. Actually, we're developing a augmented reality fitness concept,
right.
which measures. So the problem with virtual reality in fitness, the issue is if you've got a headset on and you're working out and you're sweating, that customer experience isn't particularly great.
I can imagine. Yeah, yeah.
With augmented reality, when you're wearing glasses, it's a better customer
Yes.
experience. And so we're developing programs where ultimately, if you go to the gym a lot, it's can get a bit boring, can get a bit tedious. So we've invented, in effect, games which you can play whilst you're working out.
Brilliant.
But it measures, so you've got objects flying at you and you've got to punch them like, so if you're on a treadmill or a bike or something,
Brilliant.
you've got to punch these objects the whole time. But what it does, it measures your reaction time.
Yep.
And obviously we're going to gamify this and it measures your reaction time. And so the harder you get, you slower your reaction times. But actually, so we're introducing this into some very elite sport, into Formula One, for instance.
Oh,
We're introducing
interesting.
this. We're working with Formula One, and being able to measure people's reaction time as they
Yep.
get more tired.
Yep.
If you can start training people to be fatigued but increase their reaction times, that's a fantastic
Yes.
concept. Now
Yep.
that's at the elite level, and we
Yep.
are dealing with some pretty major elite sports. But from a consumer point of view, doing an hour on a treadmill or an hour on a bike's pretty boring. Well, you can
Yep.
watch TV, or you
Yep.
could do this, and you can start measuring your reaction times and start working on your cognitive development as well at the same time.
Brilliant.
Kids, do you know what? We're all aware of obesity levels within children because of inactivity levels. Well, if we can start introducing augmented reality fitness concepts to children,
Yeah.
I've got a 16-year-old
Brilliant.
son. He's interested in that because he likes playing games. So this is
Brilliant.
a business. I'm just a non-exec director. I put in some seed capital to get it going, and it's a really interesting. We'll have the products will be coming to market next year, so that'll be interesting as well.
Fascinating. Absolutely.
I'm
Yeah.
I'm I'm, I'm really interested in health tech.
Yeah.
That's what I'm interested in now.
Yes. Yeah, that comes across. That's fascinating. I remember it was really interesting actually because I remember, or for me, it's interesting. Many years ago, we were in Australia. My brother lives in Australia. We were having a Christmas with his in-laws, and they had it was a TV based fitness game, but there was no devices, and it literally was it was a camera looking at you, and you were able to bat away things and stuff. And I remember how brilliant it was and how much I enjoyed it, and yet moving forward, it tended to be games, tended to be things you had to hold or which is
Mm.
fine, but it just felt that this idea of just not having to, as you say, have a lot of equipment, but you could just see what was going on was just. I personally found it really fun.
Good.
Um, sorry, so John, you probably we're a business coaching organisation, so keen to know who the best coaches you've worked with, whether that's business, sport, life in general. Who's had the biggest influence on you?
Well, I mean, I don't know if you know, but I mean, when I was younger, I all I ever wanted to do was play professional rugby. So I was fortunate in my younger years to come across some outstanding coaches. So the best one, without a shadow of a doubt, was a guy called Dick Greenwood, who's Will Greenwood's father.
Yes,
So he did coach England, and he played for England.
yes,
He was, and I suppose because I was at school with Will, so Dick used to come along and do a lot of our training sessions, and
brilliant.
he was inspirational. I mean,
Yep.
it's no surprise Will went on to achieve the success that he did, having a father like he did. So he would be one that would spring to mind from a very early age.
Brilliant. Brilliant.
But again, having played sport to a relatively high level, when you're used to training and in that way, you can transport those techniques and processes into business.
Yeah.
Similarities between working in an elite sport and working in business, are massive.
Yes. Yeah. As I say, we've aligned ourselves very closely with the sports coaching world because obviously they've been high performance for a very long period of time, and there's so much we learn. In fact, our director of coaching is an ex-Olympic badminton coach. So he's brought
Yeah.
again those principles in, and it's really helped us create the performance. Because as I say, the tools and the processes and systems that we have to help people grow businesses are great, but it's the desire to pick them up and use them, and it's as you said, the resilience, it's the mindset of a successful person is so key. And whether it's from your coaches or other people or yourself, are there any favourite quotes or sayings that you find yourself using a lot about regarding success in business?
I've already said it. Success doesn't travel in a straight line.
I've already got that one. Yeah, sorry.
I
I love that
I
one.
do you know what I use that all the time,
Yeah,
and it's a great saying when you've had a when you've had a loss, when you've had a hit, because you just say that to yourself or you say it to your team,
yeah, brilliant.
and they just go, all right, yeah, okay, get that.
Yeah,
Just bounce back and move on to the next thing, and take the learnings from that loss and move forwards.
brilliant, brilliant. And speaking about learnings, what have you learned about yourself, John, in your journey so far?
My levels of risk aversion are very different to most people's. um, I suppose what have I learned about myself? I am very resilient. I kind of, yeah, I suppose I've become very thick-skinned. Not a lot bothers me anymore, and that's kind of happens over time. Um, I suppose what have I learned? Actually, money isn't the real reason for doing business. And I think
Yeah,
if you set out with making money as your goal, you probably end up failing.
yeah,
I mean, I was fortunate that a lot of the businesses I've been involved with have had a massively positive impact on people's lives.
yeah,
Obviously, rolling out budget clubs opened up health and fitness to a whole new demographic of people who couldn't afford it before.
yes,
So that was very inspirational. EMS training is exactly the same. It's because it's low impact, because it's 20-minute sessions. It's anybody can do it. So
yeah,
we've got 90-year-old women who struggle to walk can do EMS. Who've had strokes can do EMS.
brilliant.
It's a whole new market, and that's very inspirational. We had a lady who'd had a stroke came in, and she used to do a lot of exercise, and she hadn't done any exercise for 2 years. And she did an EMS session, and she just burst into tears because she said, "Finally, I can exercise again." And it was such a
Wonderful.
big part of her life. We've had people who are recovering from back surgery who've been on serious painkillers, and after a few sessions of EMS have come off the painkillers. It's EMS is a very different product to going to the gym, so it's
Yeah,
aimed at a very different market. And let's face it, we've got an aging population,
yeah,
and everyone talks about an aging population. But what I'm interested in is an active aging
yes,
population. There is no point, living to 105 if your quality of life's not very good.
yeah,
You know,
agree.
but live longer actively. That's what
Brilliant,
we're interested in. So
brilliant.
our EMS is very much aimed at an older population. EMS is great at building muscle mass. That's what it does. That's what the technology does. And sarcopenia, unfortunately, kicks in when you're 30, and muscle wastage, sarcopenia,
Yes,
kicks in when you're 30, and the older you get, the faster it goes. So,
yeah,
if you can maintain muscle mass as you age, then you will have a much more active life, less
yeah,
likely to fall over, break your hip. So you will have a much better quality of life,
yeah.
and that's what we're interested in.
Brilliant.
And it's a huge market, and it's only getting bigger.
But unfortunately, I am one of your demographic, I think. So I think I need to check this out a bit more. And for anyone going to your website, there's some amazing testimonials on there. So I'd urge anyone that was at all interested to have a look.
It's very effective. I mean, so EMS originally it was invented for elite athletes, for Bayern Munich actually, for marginal gains,
Yep,
and NASA used it for the astronauts up in when they're up in space. But it was originally aimed, like I say, for marginal gains elite athletes. But it's because it's so time effective. One 20-minute session is equivalent of doing a 3 or 4 hours in the gym, and you only have to do it once or twice a week. It's so effective. It means
brilliant.
it's sustainable because
Yeah,
the time investment in going to the gym 3 times a week
yes,
significant. Whereas these are short, sharp sessions. Anyone can do them, any fitness level, and the time investment is a lot lower, so it's
brilliant.
sustainable. And things need to be sustainable for you to keep doing it.
Brilliant. Totally agree. I think I'm in. So I'm gonna have to check you guys out pretty quick. And so I'm really keen to know looking forward, John, what the future looks like. I can only imagine the growth curve that you're on. But what does the future look like for the business?
So, we launched our franchise concept. So our key product is our platform. That's what we've spent
Yep.
4 years building. But surrounded that platform is we've got various agency models, so we've got a full turnkey franchise solution.
Great.
And we launched it at the International Franchise Show in April of this year. And to date, I think I've sold nearly 30 franchises in the UK already, which, just to put it in perspective, there's been a German EMS franchise provider over here for the last 7 years, and they've sold 12 in 7 years. So we've sold 30 in 6 months, pretty much.
Brilliant.
We've got interest internationally in the US, Sweden, UAE, Japan. So next year we'll be heading international markets next year, and that'll be exciting. So yeah, huge growth opportunity. I mean, EMS as a concept, it's massive in the continent because it started in Germany. There's a lot in
Yep.
France. There's quite a lot in Eastern Europe, but internationally, it's still in its infancy. So if you think in Germany, there's 2,500 studios in Germany. In the
Yep.
UK, there's about 30, of which we've got nearly all of them, right?
Yep.
Germany and the UK, similar size market.
Yep.
So I think that's where we're heading. In the
Brilliant.
US, 10 times the size of Germany,
Yes.
there's only 20 studios in the US. So the
Wow.
potential the potential for growth in the US is enormous.
Oh, wow. Yeah. Oh, that's fascinating. Um, and I'm really keen to know what you'd say to anyone that was thinking of going to business right now, John.
Just do it. I mean, listen, until you do it, you just don't know.
Yes.
What I would say is, if if you don't have resilience, then
Yeah.
don't bother, because that's the number. If you've got resilience, you can be successful. But
Brilliant.
the number one thing is, yeah, go off and work and get some experience and pick up some knowledge but then just go and do it.
Brilliant.
This is the annoying thing about the UK. We seem to treat failure
Yeah.
as such a negative thing, whereas you get to America, failure is just part of
Yeah.
part of life. It's part of the growing process. So just go and do it. Take some
Brilliant.
risks.
Love
Put
it.
some money on the line.
I
Just do
can't
it.
say I'm surprised that you said any of that, but that's the thing. But wonderful. Yeah, and it's a really good point. I mean, your point about the States is so, I think, so relevant. There's a there is a stigma in the UK
Mm.
of failure, and yet my understanding is in the States, literally failure is almost a tick of future success.
I
Um,
mean, if people are worried, I mean, I know this is going to sound a bit preempted because I'm selling a franchise concept, but I can't remember what the exact stats are, but something like 95% of all startups fail.
yeah,
Well, 90% of franchises succeed. So, if you are interested in starting a business, franchising is a good place to start because it's a proven model.
yeah,
It works. It's a really good place to start.
I agree.
And so franchising and it's, in the US, franchising is enormous. Everybody franchises everything.
Yes,
But look for something a bit different. Like I said, I went to the International Franchise Show back in April, and there's what, 400 or 500 franchise is there. 90% of them are F, you know, it's unbelievable what isn't franchised in the F&B world. But for me, do something a bit different. I mean, obviously, come and try AMS.
good
We'd love
man.
to have some more franchises, but do something that's a bit different, and it's going to intrigue people.
Brilliant, brilliant. And interesting enough, I remember it's quite a long time ago. Our founder talking about franchising and franchises, um, and I totally support everything you said. I'm part of a franchise myself, and it's been great. Um,
Sorry, Chris, I've lost you for a minute there, and you've frozen.
oh, sorry, am I
You,
back?
you're back again. You're back
Brilliant.
again.
Brilliant. Yeah, yeah, apologies. It's probably my end. One thing I remember I found us talking about well over 10 years ago, and it was talking about franchises. And as I am part of a franchise, and I definitely support everything you said about, the success rates, etc. But one thing he said, and it really stuck with me, was he said, Chris, most people see franchises as 80% systems and 20% relationship. And he said the systems have got to be great, but it's 80% relationship and 20% systems. And I don't know if that's something you would have opinion on.
The system's got to be right, the process has got to be right, but it is all about relationships because well, life's all about relationships, and business is no different. And I know for a fact if we've got some franchises that we get on well with, then they're probably going to get more support than anybody else because and it's the other way around. If you get really successful franchises, you're going to get more referrals from them. So it's all
Absolutely.
about relationships. It's all about building those relationships and nurturing them
Yeah.
because that's how you get success.
Brilliant. Brilliant. And if you're looking back in terms of you started again, John, is there anything significant that you do differently, do you think?
No, nothing because I've made lots of mistakes and I've failed at lots of things, but I just saw them as learning opportunities. So there is nothing I would change. I'd maybe pre-warn my wife that being married to an entrepreneur, is a bit more up and down than she ever expected, but that's about it.
I did like that one. Yeah. Yes, I can. Yes, again, I can align with that one as well. And finally, what would be the best advice you could give an 18-year-old you if you could go back and do so?
What do I say? Um, I, that's a really good question. I'm not quite sure how to answer that because uh, I can't even remember being 18 years old because I'm 53 now. It's a long time ago. Um, I'd say, do you know, I was lucky because I did lots of really interesting things growing up. I did a lot of traveling. Yeah, I went away to university, but I played lots of sport. I did lots of things. So um, just I suppose naturally I'm a curious person. So when I was 18 years old, I went and lived in South Africa and played a season of rugby on my own and did things like that. So
Fabulous.
I'm quite independent, quite a curious person. So there's nothing I would say you go and do this or go and do that because I pretty much did it anyway.
Brilliant. Brilliant. And just one other thing. What if there was one, and you're allowed two or three if you need to, but one business book, business thing that's really, or book on success that's really helped you, what would that one be?
Yeah, so there's a book called That Won't Work, and then I forget the name of the author, but it's a series of chapters on different successful entrepreneurs, and the theme is the same throughout. They've all got resilience, but they've all been told when they first started out that that won't work, and so when we did our first budget club, everyone said to me, "Well, that won't work." When I would
Brilliant.
explain DMS to people, they keep saying, "Well, that won't work."
Brilliant.
So it's a great book. I can't remember who wrote it
It's
off the top of
we
my
could
head.
we'll search it up, but no,
Yeah,
that's
find it, but it's called That Won't Work, and it's like I say, is it's maybe 20 different chapters on 20 different entrepreneurs, all of them well known, all of them famous.
brilliant.
Again, coming back to something who's talking about all of them pivoted. Everybody pivots, you know. So my one piece of advice to anybody is expect to pivot because you
Great.
will.
Because success isn't a straight line. So that makes
Exactly.
absolute sense to me. Uh, John, it's been really fascinating to talk to you, Dan. I really thank you for spending some time with us. And for anyone that was interested in contacting you or Feel Electric, what would be the best way to do that?
Just through the website.
Brilliant. Brilliant.
So if anyone's interested in a franchise, just come through the website. And if anyone's interested in doing EMS and and improving their health and well-being. And we do lots of other things as well as EMS. The platform we built incorporates quite a few different biohacks.
Right.
So, for people who are busy and time poor but are interested in improving their health and well-being, it's a great way of doing it for time
Brilliant.
efficient, time poor people.
Wonderful. Wonderful. Well, look, it'd be great to swing by another 6 to 12 months and just see where we are on that trajectory again. But for now, thank you so much for your time today.
No, you're welcome. It's been a pleasure.
Yeah, me too. Thank you.